Welcome to episode 9 of the Ulysses Unlocked podcast, where we analyze Ulysses by James Joyce one page at a time. Don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe, and leave a comment to support us. And welcome everyone to our deep dive today. We're jumping into pages 11 through 13 of Ulysses. Now you might think, okay, breakfast scene, what's the big deal? But honestly, these 3 pages, they're like a pressure cooker for the whole book.
Oh, absolutely. It looks simple on the surface. They're having breakfast. The milkwoman shows up. But Joyce packs so much in. It's this incredible collision point.
Yeah, you've got Ireland's cultural fights, you've got Stephen Dedalus and all his spiritual angst, and you start seeing Joyce playing with the writing itself in really new ways.
Exactly. He takes this really mundane event, getting milk delivered, and just layers it with politics, mythology, and even these really interesting technical experiments with language.
So what are we working with today? We've got the text itself, obviously, pages 11 to 13.
Right, and we're drawing on quite a bit of analysis, looking at the symbolism, the satire, the myths Joyce is playing with, and crucially, how he starts to almost like break apart traditional sentence structure.
Okay, so our mission then is to unpack all that complexity. We're looking at the jabs at the Irish literary revival.
Yep, that's a big one.
The whole symbolism around Ireland as this, woman figure.
The milkwoman, yeah.
And this idea you mentioned about fragmented agency, what's that about?
We'll get into it, but it's about how Joyce starts writing about bodies and actions in a really unusual way. It's fascinating.
Okay, let's unpack this.
Yeah.
So we kick off, and Buck Mulligan is still holding court, right? Performing for Stephen and Haines.
Oh, he's definitely putting on a show. They're having breakfast. Haines, the English visitor, is there, and Mulligan's just electric, but also quite aggressive, intellectually speaking.
And he does this thing with the bread knife.
Yeah, he lunges a slice of bread towards Haines, literally impaled on his knife. It's such a Mulligan gesture, theatrical, bit menacing.
And it sets up this whole rant, doesn't it? This attack on, well, everything Haines seems to represent.
Precisely. It's the perfect lead-in for him to unleash this really concentrated satire. He gets it right at Haines, the guy who's supposedly fascinated by Irish culture, and says, let me get the quote right, "That's folk for your book, Haines. 5 lines of text and 10 pages of notes about the folk and the Fishgods of Dundrum, printed by the Weird Sisters in the year of the big wind."
Wow. Okay, there's a lot in there. Let's break it down. Folk. He's definitely mocking the whole revivalist obsession with, like, peasant culture and ancient myths.
Absolutely nailing it. The Irish literary revival, people like Yeats, were heavily invested in documenting and celebrating ancient legends, myths, customs. Mulligan's rolling his eyes at it.
He sees it as pretentious, or maybe sentimental.
Both, I think. He mocks the idea that every little folktale needs 10 pages of notes. That's the pedantic scholarship side. But he's also implicitly mocking the sometimes overly romantic view of the folk. He sees it as navel-gazing, basically, ignoring the present.
And Yeats is the main target here, even if he's not named.
Oh, almost certainly. Yeats was the figurehead. Collections like his Fairy and Folktales of the Irish Peasantry are exactly what Mulligan's parodying with 5 lines of text and 10 pages of notes.
Okay, so that's the general target. But then he gets really specific with Fishgods of Dundrum. What's going on there? Fishgods sound sort of authentically mythic.
They do, yeah. You think maybe Fomorians, those sea giants from Irish legend? But putting them in Dundrum, that's where the joke lies. It's deliberately absurd.
Why Dundrum? What's the significance?
Well, Dundrum, south of Dublin, wasn't known for fish gods. It was known for 2 things relevant here. Historically, there were some ancient games held near Dundrum, north of Dublin, so maybe a faint echo of folk.
Okay.
But the real punchline is the Dundrum south of Dublin. That was the location of a major lunatic asylum.
Okay, I see where this is going.
Right. And crucially, this same area, Dundrum, is where the Dun Emer Press was founded.
The press founded by, wait for it.
The Weird Sisters.
Yeah. Which is his next line. So Weird Sisters isn't just Shakespeare's witches.
It evokes them. Absolutely. Chaos, prophecy, maybe a bit of madness. But everyone in Dublin reading this would have immediately known he meant W.B. Yeats's sisters, Elizabeth and Lily.
Who ran the Dun Emer Press in Dundrum.
Exactly. Publishing Irish writers, promoting Irish crafts. Mulligan is basically saying their whole high-minded cultural project belongs in the loony bin next door.
That is brutal. And didn't Mulligan earlier make a crack about a new art color for poetry?
He did. Another little jab at the Dun Emer aesthetic. Now he just connects all the dots. The press, The sisters, the location near the asylum, it's a complete demolition job on the revival's pretensions.
And then he throws in the year of the big wind. That sounds historical.
It is. The big wind in Gaoithe Móire was a real hurricane-level storm in Ireland in 1839. Utter devastation. It became like historical marker, before the big wind, after the big wind.
So a major catastrophe. How does that fit the satire?
Because the Dun Emer Press, those very weird sisters, actually used that phrase. On the colophon page of Yeats's book In the Seven Woods, published by them in 1903, it says it was finished in the year of the big wind, 1903.
No way. They co-opted a national disaster for their book launch.
Well, maybe they saw their cultural work as equally momentous or turbulent, but Mulligan twists it. He implies their whole enterprise is either as chaotic and destructive as the 1839 storm.
Or maybe just doomed, like destined to be remembered as some kind of legendary failure.
Exactly. It just drains all the seriousness out of the project. It's incredibly cynical, but also, you have to admit, pretty clever satire.
He's relentless, and he's not done with the scholarly jokes, is he? He puts on this, professorial voice.
Yeah, he adopts this fine, puzzled voice, the text says, and asks Stephen this absolutely ridiculous question. He asks if Mother Grogan's tea and water pot is in the Mabinogion or the Upanishads.
Okay, Mother Grogan, not exactly ancient myth.
Not even close. She's from a popular, kind of silly contemporary Irish song, like pub song material.
And the Mabinogion is Welsh legends, right?
Correct. Ancient Welsh Celtic tales.
Yeah.
And the Upanishads are foundational Hindu philosophical texts from ancient India.
So the combination is just absurd.
Utterly absurd. It's mocking the academic tendency to find deep connections everywhere, to treat flimsy pop culture like sacred text. He's basically asking, is this bit of Dublin slang found in ancient Welsh myth or ancient Indian scripture? It highlights the sheer randomness and, frankly, irrelevance of some scholarly pursuits.
And Stephen's response is perfect. Just deadpan.
I doubt it. And then he adds, really dryly, I fancy it did not exist in or out of the Mabinogion. He refuses to play Mulligan's game, he sees the absurdity, and just states the obvious.
It really shows the difference between them. Mulligan uses wit to destroy, Stephen uses precision to deflate.
Well put. And there might be one last dig in there, aimed squarely at Haines.
The Englishman collecting Irish stuff.
Yeah. By bringing up Wales, another Celtic nation under British influence in India, the major British colony Mulligan might be subtly mocking Haines' whole project. Is Ireland just another exotic place for you to catalog, like Wales or India? Is it just cultural tourism or even appropriation?
That adds another layer. Okay, so that whole storm of intellectual mockery kind of clears, and then the tone shifts dramatically.
It really does. The doorway darkens. The milkwoman enters.
Here's where it gets really interesting. The satire fades, and suddenly we're dealing with heavy symbolism.
The prose changes. It becomes more focused, more internal, especially from Stephen's viewpoint. He gets the jug, she pours the milk, and Joyce writes, it's rich white milk, not hers.
Not hers. That feels significant.
Hugely significant. She's a conduit, not the source. She's delivering sustenance, but it doesn't originate with her. It immediately sets her up as something more than just a milk vendor. A messenger, perhaps. A vessel.
But before Stephen goes down that symbolic rabbit hole, Mulligan interacts with her, doesn't he? And it's pure Mulligan.
Oh, yeah. She gives a traditional pious greeting, glory be to God. And Mulligan, completely irreverent, just shoots back, to whom?
Classic. He can't resist.
And then he switches immediately into his medical student mode. He sees her and launches into this blunt social critique about Ireland's health problems.
Right. He blames the rotten teeth and rotten guts on bad food, living in a bog swamp, dust, horse manure, spit from people with consumption. It's a pretty grim picture.
It's a very modern, materialistic diagnosis of Ireland's ills. No romance, no myth, just poor diet and sanitation. He's the practical, cynical scientist.
And how does the old woman react to this assessment?
She actually shows him deference. She bows her head to her medicine man. She respects his modern scientific authority, even as he's basically insulting the entire nation's hygiene.
That contrast is stark. Mulligan sees a public health issue.
And Stephen sees, well, something entirely different. His mind immediately starts elevating her, mythologizing her.
He calls her old and secret, thinks of her as a witch on her toadstool, mentions her do silky cattle. He's layering myth onto this very ordinary woman.
And this mythologizing happens on two specific levels, which are really key to understanding the scene. First, there's the Homeric level.
The Odyssey parallel.
Exactly. He compares her implicitly to the goddess Athena visiting Telemachus. Athena often came disguised as an old man, like mentees or mentor, to offer guidance or sometimes to, give him a kick up the backside.
To guide or upbraid.
Right. And Stephen wonders if this old woman has come to serve or to upbraid him. He's always casting himself in these epic roles. Is she a divine messenger here to help him break out of his funk, his paralysis, but his mother and his art?
But there's a specifically Irish layer, too, isn't there? Which feels even more powerful in this context.
Oh, much more immediate, yes. She's described as the lowly form of an immortal. This is a direct echo of the Shan Van Vocht.
Which means?
The poor old woman. It's one of the most enduring personifications of Ireland in nationalist allegory. Ireland is this suffering, poor, but resilient old woman.
So she is Mother Ireland, serving milk the nation's sustenance.
To Mulligan, the mocker of tradition, and Haines, the Englishman, the colonizer. The text even calls her their common cookyin, a woman serving those who betray or dominate her. She embodies the exploited nation.
But Stephen's reaction is different from Telemachus's. Telemachus eventually gets the message from Athena.
Right. Telemachus recognizes the divinity and accepts the help. But Stephen, he scorned to beg her favor. He notices she respects Mulligan's scientific talk, but seems to slight him.
Why does he scorn her if she's this powerful symbol?
Maybe because this version of Mother Ireland seems defeated, subservient, compliant even, serving the betrayer and the conqueror. Stephen is trying to forge his own path, non serviam, I will not serve. He can't accept guidance from a figure who seems trapped in servitude herself. He rejects her.
And that rejection seems to curdle into something much darker, doesn't it? This sudden, really shocking internal monologue about her body.
It's jarring. He goes from seeing her as this mythic figure to this incredibly harsh, misogynistic judgment. It seems triggered by feeling slighted by her. His resentment flips into this torrent of, frankly, body-hating language.
He thinks of her in terms of woman's unclean loins, of man's flesh made not in God's likeness, the serpent's prey. Where does that language even come from? It's so specific, so theological.
It's steeped in the Catholic tradition he's trying to escape. Unclean loins goes right back to the Old Testament Leviticus, things dealing with ritual purity laws around menstruation and childbirth, viewing the female body as periodically unclean.
And man's flesh made not in God's likeness, the serpent's prey.
That's Eve, right? The Garden of Eden.
Exactly. It invokes the whole doctrine of original sin, blaming Eve, the womb of sin, associating woman fundamentally with temptation, corruption, and the fall. It's pure, ingrained religious misogyny. Which is terrifying because Stephen has supposedly rejected the church. He refused to become a priest. He doesn't pray.
Intellectually, yes, but psychologically, he's still trapped. The guilt, the shame, the association of female sexuality and the body itself with sin that's been hammered into him by Irish Catholicism. He can't shake it.
He can't separate the woman from the idea of sin.
He really can't. He's trying to be this free artist, but his perceptions are still filtered through this incredibly repressive, body-hating lens he inherited.
So when he rejects her as Mother Ireland, is he rejecting the nation through this misogynistic lens?
I think that's a very sharp way to put it. The political rejection gets tangled up with this deep-seated pathological view of the female body. The nation is embodied in a form he's been taught to despise as unclean. So his rejection of national servitude comes out coded in the language of sexual contamination. It's not a clean break. It's messy and deeply troubled.
And it's crucial we remember this is Stephen in 1904, not necessarily Joyce, the author, writing later.
Absolutely critical distinction. Joyce himself wrestled with this stuff, the Catholic guilt around sexuality.
Yeah.
But meeting Nora Barnacle later in 1904 was transformative for him. Yeah. Nora had this sort of natural acceptance of the body, free from all that intellectualized guilt.
She helped him move past it.
Sources suggest she was key. She allowed him a relationship that wasn't poisoned by shame. Stephen, in this scene, is Joyce before that breakthrough. He's still carrying that heavy weight of repression.
It makes his struggle for artistic freedom seem even more difficult, more painful. Okay, so from that really intense internal psychological moment, the scene shifts again, back to the outside world, back to politics.
Right. The focus goes back to language. The milkwoman hears Haines talking and asks quite innocently, "Is it French you were talking, sir?"
And the punchline is?
Haines wasn't speaking French. He was speaking Irish. Gaelic.
Oh, wow. The irony.
It's devastating irony. Here's the Englishman, Haines the romantic outsider who thinks we ought to speak Irish in Ireland, actually speaking it. And the old Irish woman, the allegorical Mother Ireland.
Doesn't even recognize her own native tongue. She thinks it's French.
It perfectly encapsulates the tragedy of linguistic colonization. The language has been so lost, so suppressed, that the very people it belongs to don't know it when they hear it.
And her reaction when Mulligan tells her it's Irish?
She feels shame. "I'm ashamed I don't speak the language myself," she says. It's heartbreaking. The colonizer speaks the language. The colonized feels shame for not knowing it.
And Mulligan rubs it in a bit too, doesn't he? With that phrase, "Is there Gaelic on you?"
Yeah, that's apparently a very specific West of Ireland colloquialism. Using that peasant phrase highlights the gap. Even the Dublin University students might know more authentic Irish than the older urban working class who, symbolically at least, should be the carriers of the tradition.
This whole scene speaks volumes about Joyce's own feelings about the language revival, doesn't it? Which were pretty complicated.
Extremely complicated. He wasn't a simple nationalist. He obviously saw the power and beauty of English as a literary language.
Yeah.
But he also deeply resented how English had displaced Irish, how his people had been linguistically colonized.
He felt they'd kind of fallen between two stools, not fully Irish-speaking, but not culturally assimilated into English either.
Exactly. He felt they'd accepted the conqueror's language, but hadn't really absorbed the culture that came with it, leaving them in this kind of linguistic no man's land. And this feeling of alienation is something Stephen feels intensely.
This connects back to that famous bit in Portrait of the Artist, the Pundish incident.
Oh, absolutely. That's the classic example. We should probably just quickly remind ourselves of that.
Yeah, do.
So Stephen, as a student, is talking to the English Dean of Studies. Stephen uses the word tundish, which is basically a type of funnel. The dean kind of corrects him, implies funnel is the proper English word. And tundish is, well, wrong or provincial.
And Stephen feels this profound sense of being foreign in his own language.
Exactly. He feels that English, even though it's the only language he really commands, is still an acquired speech. He feels like its words aren't truly his, that using them causes this unrest of spirit. He feels linguistically inferior, colonized even in his own vocabulary.
But the killer irony of that whole tundish thing was...
That tundish is an English word. It's just an older or regional variant. The dean was wrong, or at least snobbish. So Stephen's feeling of inadequacy was based on a false premise, highlighting the deep cultural confusion and self-doubt that colonization breeds.
So Joyce and Stephen, they aren't cheerleading for the political side of the revival, but they absolutely value the idea of a native language, something authentic, maybe even something outlawed.
Definitely. You see that later in Ulysses in the Ithaca chapter. Stephen and Bloom, the Irish artist and the Jewish outsider, share these moments where they recite bits of ancient Irish and Hebrew.
Languages of their respective ancestors.
Right. And they value these words precisely because they are graven in the language of the outlaw. It's about cherishing heritage on its own terms as art and identity, separate from any political program.
Okay, so this whole milkwoman scene is just packed. It connects Stephen's personal hang-ups to the nation's cultural problems through symbolism and the language debate.
It's incredibly dense.
But now we need to shift gears, because you mentioned Joyce is also doing something technically innovative here. Something about syntax. Dispersed agency.
Yes. This is really subtle but foundational for how Joyce writes later in the book. We start seeing sentences where body parts seem to act on their own. Instead of saying, "he took his hat," Joyce might write, "his hand took his hat from the peg."
Okay, I see the difference. The hand is the subject, not the person.
Exactly. Or think about Bloom later. "His slow feet walked him riverward, reading." It's the feet doing the walking to him, almost controlling him.
Like the body has a will of its own.
Precisely. Or the example from this section we're looking at. "His hand accepted the moist, tender gland and slid it into a side pocket." The hand is the agent. It breaks from standard prose where you have this single, unified self, the he or she, controlling all the actions through the body parts.
So it suggests actions can be involuntary, unconscious.
That's the implication. It gives grammatical weight to the idea that parts of us can operate outside our conscious command. Think about Stephen just wandering aimlessly earlier. Am I not going to Aunt Sarah's?
Yeah.
Seems not. His feet are taking him somewhere else, and his mind just registers it.
Right. His body decides, his mind follows.
So the syntax reflects that psychological reality. When the conscious mind is drifting or paralyzed, like Stephen's often is, the body just keeps going. It has its own momentum.
Now, is this just a fancy way of speaking, like synecdoche, where you use a part to mean the whole, all hands on deck, that kind of thing?
That's the big debate among scholars, like Derek Attridge. Is it just a stylistic flourish, easily translated back to "he took his hat"? Or is Joyce doing something more radical?
What's the more radical interpretation?
That maybe our usual way of speaking, insisting on that unitary, masterful, efficient self controlling everything, is actually the figure of speech. Maybe that's the convention that hides the truth.
The truth being that we are more fragmented, that our bodies do have impulses and actions outside our conscious will.
Exactly. So Joyce's syntax becomes this truth-telling device. It acknowledges the involuntary, the unconscious, the habitual, all the ways our bodies operate somewhat independently of our central command. It liberates the body, as Attridge puts it, from a dictatorial and englobing will.
Wow. Okay. That connects back powerfully to Stephen's issues, doesn't it? His whole struggle with his body, with sexuality, with repression.
Absolutely directly.
Yeah.
If the conscious mind, the dictatorial will, is repressed and guilt-ridden like Stephen's, it tries to clamp down on the body, on physical life, on sexuality.
So by grammatically freeing the body parts, letting them act on their own,
Joyce is creating the linguistic space for that physical, sensual, even erotic life to emerge. It's about acknowledging the body's own power, its own drives.
which is why we see this technique become much more prominent in later chapters, like Sirens, the music chapter with all the flirting mermaids.
Exactly. Sirens is full of it. You get lines like, Miss Douce's wet lips said, laughing in the sun, or Lenehan's lips over the counter lisped a low whistle of decoy. The lips, the eyes, the hands, they become these almost independent agents of attraction and sensuality.
Because sexuality thrives in that space where the body isn't rigidly controlled by a guilty mind.
That seems to be the implication. The strict morality Stephen inherited insists on the mind controlling the lower body. Joyce's syntax subtly undermines that hierarchy. It suggests the body has its own life, its own voice.
So the technical innovation is deeply tied to the psychological themes. To free the character from repression, Joyce first has to free the grammar that describes him.
It's a brilliant fusion of form and content. The way he writes enacts the liberation he's exploring thematically.
Okay, so let's try and pull these threads together as we wrap up this deep dive into just 3 pages. It's amazing how much is in there.
It really is a microcosm.
So first, we saw Mulligan using that incredibly sharp, specific satire Dundrum, the big wind, the Fishgods, Mother Grogan, to just tear down the pretensions of the Irish literary revival.
Yep, the critique of cultural pedantry and sentimentality.
Second, the huge symbolic weight loaded onto the milkwoman. She's not just selling milk, she's a potential Homeric messenger, and she's the Shan Van Vocht, Mother Ireland herself, leading to Stephen's complicated rejection of that national allegory.
Right, contrasting her mundane reality with those huge symbolic roles.
Third, the whole language debate. The biting irony of the Englishman speaking Irish while Mother Ireland doesn't recognize it, feeling shame, and how that connects to Stephen's own feeling of linguistic alienation, the Tundish problem.
The commentary on linguistic colonization and identity, yeah.
And finally, this really subtle but revolutionary technique Joyce introduces, using body parts as agents in the sentences, this dispersed agency.
Fracturing that idea of the single controlling self and giving the body its own grammatical independence, paving the way for exploring unconscious drives and sensuality later on.
So what does this all mean when you put it all together?
It means pages 11 to 13 aren't just a scene setter. They're like a miniature stage where Joyce plays out Ireland's cultural battles, Stephen's deepest psychological knots, and starts experimenting with the very language tools he'll use to build the rest of the novel. It's the workshop where Ulysses starts finding its unique voice and form.
Okay, that leaves us with a final thought to chew on. We've talked about how language itself seems like a trap for Stephen, the post-colonial artist. We talked about Joyce fragmenting the subject grammatically to liberate the body. So here's the provocative question. If you can liberate the body by breaking the sentence, does Joyce ultimately suggest that the only way to really escape the colonial trap, to reclaim identity, is to break the language itself? Is that where he's heading? Towards the radical fragmentation of English that we see in Finnegan's Wake. Is that the ultimate act of linguistic decolonization, trying to, as he puts it in the Wake, wipe alley English spooker off the face of the earth?
That's a huge question. A necessary one, I think, when you see the seeds being planted right here.
Something for all of you to think about. Thank you for joining us for this deep dive.
Thanks, everyone.
We'll see you next time on Ulysses Unlocked.